was a crazy amount of discourse online regarding the sharp drop in viewership going from season 1 to 2 of Daredevil Born Again. Reportedly, it had over 8 million viewers in season 1, and it dropped all the way to 4.5 million now that we're in season 2. That's nearly a 50% drop, and while it's difficult to know how that compares to other streaming series and the original Daredevil run, the online discourse has been mixed. Lots are praising the new season, with tons of buzz online. However, many are sour on the series, citing rushed pacing, Kingpin fatigue, and Matt not getting enough screen time in his own series. It's safe to say that a lot of these issues are due to the crazy production of the first season of Born Again, with its original direction being scrapped and having to be repurposed into a continuation of the Netflix Daredevil. My thoughts on the series evolved as I watched the episodes week to week. And overall, while I enjoyed many of the episodes of the series, it would have been on the tier of the Netflix original run if it had more episodes to flesh out its ideas. Before we get into season 2, let's put into context my thoughts on the other seasons of Daredevil. The Netflix run is some of the greatest television out there, and if it actually got a proper ending, it would be in my top 5 TV shows of all time. I absolutely love it. And the formula that really worked for me is the show having a central mystery relating around Kingpin that all the characters can bounce off of and affect in their own ways. The supporting cast storylines with Karen and Foggy were just as interesting as the main plot with Matt Murdock, and it all melded together with some visceral fight scenes that engaged me each episode. Season 2 dropped the ball a bit with the Elektra storyline, but all the stuff with the Punisher was excellent, the highlight of that series being the prison episode. Overall, it was a masterwork of television, and I'm so happy it was given another chance to complete its unfinished threads. But what did I think of Born Again Season 1? They massacred my boy. They massacred my fucking boy! I won't mince words. I hate Season 1 of Daredevil Born Again. I never properly watched the original run while it was airing, so I'd only gotten into Daredevil when Born Again was airing. I jumped straight into Born Again after the 3 seasons of the Netflix Daredevil and had a terrible time. I can't even blame the creators. Originally, Born Again was a reboot with its own continuity that had some of the same actors as the original. They had to piece together scraps from repurposed footage and did what they can to try and bridge the original Daredevil run with only a small amount of new material to shoot. That doesn't mean that I hate it any less. It already had a terrible start with killing Foggy, and I completely understand why they did it, but the way it was executed really rubbed me the wrong way. There was no build-up, he just died immediately at the start of the show. It comes across like Born Again hates the original run. You could make the decision of killing Foggy work, it's still throwing a massive wrench into what made the original so good, but it is possible. But he's such a central character to the original run that you can't just pull it out of nowhere. If you had the entire first episode lead up to it, then it could work. But it doesn't, so I hate that choice. Also, all of the side characters suck. I'm struggling to remember any of their names, that's how boring they were. And it never answers how Kingpin, after season 3 of Daredevil, gets out of prison and becomes mayor. I know the real answer is it was a reboot with the same actors and wasn't supposed to be in the same continuity, but it is in the same continuity now, and that never gets properly addressed. The only episode I actually liked about Born Again Season 1 was the bank heist, because it was completely disconnected to the original run and could have been its own thing. It wasn't constantly reminding me of how little everything gelled together. One of my biggest problems with Season 1 was that Kingpin was boring, and I don't even know how that's possible. He was the best character in the original run, but he was so sterile in the first season. Also, it just looks way worse than the original run. Despite having a much larger budget, it looks like every other Marvel project. Whereas the original run was much more lived in, shadows were dark, there was high contrast, and the smaller budget gave it a more intimate street level view. Okay, I could go on forever about how much I hate Season 1 of Born Again. But the important thing to note is, the creators were trying to bring it to the same standard as the original run. And now, they don't have to work with any repurposed footage, and they have a full run all to themselves. So how did they do? After watching the first episode, I'm cautiously optimistic. It was a mixed bag that picked up in the second half. The episode doesn't start well, however, because of the fucking BB report. This is something I completely forgot about Season 1, and I'm really not a fan of it continuing. Essentially, this is just street-level interviews about the state of the city, and it feels like a really lazy way to have randomers deliver information to camera that isn't even important. They also break up the flow of the show, and you could just cut these scenes out, and it would all stay the same. There's supposed to be an element of these interviews are state-controlled and just propaganda pieces for Kingpin, but they don't need them to keep happening or be executed in that way to get this point across. The real opener to the episode involves the Daredevil boat heist, and it does show the benefit of the increased budget, with the violence being bloodier. This arm snap is brutal. Although I'm not a fan of the aspect ratio as a whole, and we'll get into why later, I love how they change it with Matt using his Daredevil powers. Hey, I just wanted to jump in here and say thanks for watching. Also, if you like my content, it'd be great if you could subscribe. Also, I made a 5-part comedy crime miniseries called Midlands Mayhem, which you can watch all episodes for free right now on midlandsmayhem.com. We've got some pretty cool action sequences, so, Daredevil also has cool action sequences, so maybe you'll like it, I don't know. Anyway, back to the video. I'm also apprehensive on making Matt and Karen a couple. It feels like we skipped a couple steps between the seasons. The execution throughout the rest of the relationship is okay, although I just wish there was more time dedicated to it. We also have a new character introduced this season, Mr. Charles, played by Matthew Lillard. His role for now is making sure the wider government doesn't interfere with Fisk and what he's doing with New York. As the series progresses, he'll switch alliances, but he's really not in the show that much. For me, that's for the best. As much as I love Matthew Lillard, I'm not the biggest fan of his character's writing. It seems like they were the only character allowed to say fuck, and he took that license all the way by saying it non-stop. I think the dialogue can be a bit, for lack of a better word, marvelly.
I have 4 brothers. I don't get embarrassed.
Is this some, sisterhood here, end at the lesson type shit?
No.
It always seems like the newer characters get this type of dialogue because the original cast seem okay. They have to do a lot of legwork making us care about the side characters from season 1, since that season definitely didn't do it. The dynamic I was initially concerned about is Michael Gandolfini's character Daniel and BB Urich. I'm okay with BB's character, although her name being attached to the reports has made me moderately hostile towards her. They do some fun mind games between her and Daniel, which they appropriately set up with Karen and BB's conversation in this episode. When BB and Daniel meet, it seems like Daniel is just a complete idiot who's leaking information to a reporter. But it's also implied that he's doing that to intentionally disarm her. This is an arc that develops in the later episodes and was one of the best elements of the series for me, save for one part about it. I'm not a fan of feeling like I missed out because I wasn't one of the 4 people that watched the Hawkeye show. Tony Dalton's character, aka the Swordmaster, seems to fit the role of any vigilante character, so I don't feel like I missed out on too much. What's going on with the therapist has some intrigue, with her memory flashes to the serial killer Muse from season 1. There's some cool stuff in the series with her, but not something that gets overly developed. The final scene of the episode is great. They finally acknowledge that Matt would be affected by his best friend being murdered. It got in the way of his daredeviling, which nearly got him killed, if not for Bullseye, which gives us a cool setup for the next episode. I'm mixed on this first episode, but leaning positive. Let's see how episode 2 goes. We're so fucking back. This is the first time where an episode felt as good as the OG Daredevil run, and that's got a lot to do with the big man. Fisk actually feels like an active character again, making active choices. Not only that, but the decisions he makes are smart as well. Until now, Matt had the safety of walking around as Matt Murdock, but now that Kingpin has put out a missing persons report on him and publicly declared him a hero, he doesn't have that safety anymore. The same goal could have been achieved by any number of methods, telling the task force to find him, adding him as Daredevil, etc. But with this decision, they achieve that goal and make Kingpin an active and smart character. Like Matt says in the show.
He gets all the people who support vigilantes searching for Matt Murdock and all the people who hate them searching for Daredevil.
This ties in nicely with Bullseye and his role, which is still mostly unknown by this point in the show. The thing I love about his character is how blue lighting follows him everywhere he goes, even when it doesn't logically make sense. That's not a criticism either, it doesn't have to make sense. The MCU has been sorely lacking in something that has visual flair. Visuals overall are really strong, and this is definitely the best looking MCU project I've seen. Tons of stark colours and bold choices. It's much more visually consistent so far than Season 1. Vanessa's dream sequence is a great example of this. Opening with a blue rose, and then everything being tinted in blue immediately signals to us the viewer that she's in danger. It also makes an incredibly satisfying reveal on showing us that the rose is actually the colour red, and it was a dream. This episode expertly sets up some of the conflicts we'll be seeing throughout. Bullseye hunting down Vanessa, Kirsten McDuffie and the relatives of the White Tiger in a legal battle against the corruption of the Punisher Task Force, and the BB Daniel information leak conflict. The structuring of that scene is excellent as well. It's intercut with this scene of Fisk talking to Sheila, who's clearly in danger. Because of how this scene is positioned, it implies the same level of threat is present between Daniel and BB, with how similar those scenes are. Leading into that scene, they have some B-roll of street graffiti in New York, and it conveys how the city feels about Fisk in a much subtler way, and isn't just beating you over the head with the BB report. Okay, yes, there is one BB report in this episode, so I'll knock off half a point for that. But 1 is much better than 3, okay? Also, this episode has a banger ending. 1 with a sick Daredevil fight scene, but 2 with Karen kidnapping a member of the task force. I'm glad this was a Karen decision and not Matt, because as I said, the best part about the original Daredevil run was Karen and Foggy being active participants in the story, and this is exactly what she needs to have that same type of success. Surprisingly, this is the lowest rated episode of the season, and I think that reason is twofold. 1 is the episode is a lot of setup, and not many big things happen in it. Generally speaking, episodes from any series with big plot moments tend to be higher rated. The general audience is mostly here for catharsis. Secondly, I would guess it's a bit of Kingpin fatigue. The online discourse had a lot of people complaining that they were tired of Kingpin being the primary villain for Daredevil, and could they have anyone else? Look, there is a bit of overexposure for him to be sure, but that's not the biggest issue in my eyes. The biggest issue is they never explained how he became mayor. In Season 3 of the original run, I don't think anyone was complaining that Kingpin was the main villain again, and if the series kept on running, he almost certainly would have made a comeback. But the lack of justification for his return is what I think the problem is. It could come across like they just didn't have any other villains, or had favoritism towards him, because it didn't make sense in context that he was back. That personally wasn't an issue for me, because I'm aware of the behind the scenes problems. But most viewing the show aren't, so I can't blame them. Episode 3 is good. Not as good as the previous, but better than the first. A thought I had watching this episode is, would it have been more interesting if the task force member they kidnapped didn't want to help them? In this episode, he was purposely seeking them out, but I think watching Matt and Karen have to interrogate him, and eventually having the ethical dilemma on if they should kill him, would have been really interesting. If they kept him for hostage for longer, it would have been a great way to add further conflict. Especially because in this episode, Karen and Matt debate about killing. And it's clear Karen has been influenced by the Punisher and his way of thinking. It's cool, and it's a natural progression of Karen's character, and gives good conflict between Matt and her. You could argue it's retreading old ground, but I think there's enough evolution for the characters that makes it unique. One thing I'm not so big on is the continuation of us seeing the full video of mocking the mayor. I was okay with it once when it had the reveal of it being BB, but I'm not really sure of its purpose in this episode. We aren't getting any new information. Sure, there's the bit about Tony Dalton's swordsman, but that was already clear from his other scenes. So I don't really know why it's there. Speaking of, I really like Tony Dalton as the swordsman. As you may or may not know, I'm a massive fan of Better Call Saul, and I was surprised to learn that he was already in the MCU. As I said, he's in Hawkeye, not that I watched it, and it doesn't feel like I'm missing out on too much. Tony Dalton just has great charm, and he's impossible not to like. He bounces off Kirsten so well, especially in the trial. The court case is a setup for showing how rigged Fisk and his administration have the court systems, preparing us for the big court case in the final stretch of episodes, and how they're going to have to play the game differently. I'm starting to like Kirsten. Her growing up with brothers aside, she plays her role well within the show. The thing is, it's kind of hard not to see her as the stand-in for Foggy, and she's never going to be able to compare to him. We had 39 episodes with Foggy, and we've barely had any with her to develop her own character. Anyway, here's a bit of visual storytelling from the mayor's dinner. Vanessa tells Fisk that this politician is testing him, and then we cut to a shot of Fisk holding a knife, giving us the indication that Fisk wants to kill her. It's time though. Let's talk about the oner. It's a really sick action sequence. I love the busyness with all the extras scrambling to escape. All the action with the swordsman and Daredevil is brutal as well. Really viscerally entertaining. But does it top the hallway sequence from season 1 or the prison oner from season 3? No, it doesn't, and I'll tell you why. They don't hide the cuts as well. You see, a lot of oners aren't actually true oners. By that I mean they hide cuts to give the illusion it was all done in one take. If you can hide them well enough, they can feel just as good. The reason behind them hiding the cuts is, if they were to do it all in one take for real, it would completely balloon your budget to get it correct. Trust me, as someone who works as a full-time editor and is obsessed with oners in his own work, they're really difficult to do, especially in a fight scene. I might ruin the magic of oners for you as I'm about to explain it, so if you don't want the illusion broken, skip ahead to my thoughts on the next episode. There's two primary ways to hide a cut in a oner. There's something covering frame, like this woman running across, or doing a whip pan, like this one. Something covering frame is very handy. The easiest technique is just to have the frame fully turned black, like it does in the hallway sequence. Then you can start your next shot fully black, and no one will be able to tell. This sequence does that a couple of times, but in the case I highlighted, what they'll do is mask out this woman as she runs across the frame and reveal the new shot they want to stitch in. If you do it quick enough, it'll be near impossible to tell. I find these are always a bit of a jumpy cut, since you'll never be able to finish your camera position in the same spot. Then there's the whip pan. This one's easy to pull off. Just turn your camera in one direction and match that movement into the next shot, and you'll never be able to see the cut. This is hidden by how cameras blur moving at that speed, and as long as you start your whip at roughly the same position both times, you'll never be able to see that cut. I, as an editor, found the cuts in this sequence a little jarring, but I'm like the 0.1% of 0.1% of viewers of this show. No one other than me, and people that are into film editing like me, will be able to notice that, so my opinion regarding that is completely irrelevant. As the sequence progresses outside, Karen gets to do more stuff and interacts with the White Tiger's daughter. This scene was good, but they added the extra line, and it really lost me.
Someone has to.
It's just very Marvel. Anyway, I really enjoyed Karen being in the thick of the action and shooting. That's really cool, and I'm glad to see my girl progress. The episode ends with Fisk blowing up the boat, and damn, they didn't have the budget to do that in the original run. MCU money has its benefits. Also, in case you were wondering why the Punisher wasn't in the cages, he escaped in the post-credit scene of season 1. For a while I thought, why isn't he here? Until I remembered that. I got the ending of this episode spoiled for me ahead of time, which definitely affected my enjoyment of the ending. It would have been more shocking not knowing what was coming, but I still enjoyed it nonetheless. The Marvel logo at the start of the episode was shaded blue rather than the normal red, so you know Bullseye is going to cause some chaos in this episode. But not before this stupid fucking Kingpin video section, just reminding us about the boxing match. Okay, I'm sorry, this is the last time I'll mention them, because this is the last time they appear. But so far, they're the biggest detractor of this season. They're just lazy exposition dumps, and I hate them so much. Moving on to the positive though, I love the stylized cinematography they do with Bullseye. Obviously the blue that I've pointed out before, but even this shot of him entering the diner is in a Dutch angle. This usually signifies that something is wrong, like the characters are in danger, or it gives a glimpse into a character's fractured mental state. In the case of Daredevil, shit was about to go down in that diner. And that it did. Great sequence, and I love how much the blade sound effects stick out and emphasize their lethality. Before the reveal that the Bullseye was drawn with ketchup, I said aloud, did he just drink that full bottle? It would have been a really weird choice, but I would have respected it. Flipping further forward, there's a really great scene between Matt and Bullseye, that of course had a cool fight scene, but also some small but strong dialogue exchange between them. This shows how fractured Bullseye's mental state really is. It got me thinking, damn, I wish we had more dialogue exchanges from these characters. And maybe the series is missing out on that. They are balancing a lot of different characters and moving pieces, but at times, it does feel like Matt is being sidelined in his own show and doesn't have a strong primary internal conflict or character flaw to overcome. It's more physical obstacles in his way. There's a bit of focus on how he's dealing with Foggy's death, but there is not much time for it because of all the side characters. Those side characters' plots don't hit quite as hard as scenes with Matt or Bullseye would. The exception to this is the BB Daniel subplot. I'm enjoying the cat and mouse of who's playing who, and this episode has a small but great scene around that. Otherwise, I'm starting to feel like the characters may be a little unfocused. One of the biggest offenders for that was Vanessa, and in this episode, Bullseye kills her. This is a really smart decision. Vanessa kinda ran out of things to do. In the original run, her back and forth with Kingpin and his criminal empire was compelling because of how much Kingpin cared for her, and did everything in service of her. But they lost that connection in the first season of Born Again because she cheated on him or something. I'm really not sure what was going on there. I don't know if that was because of the repurposed footage or something, or I missed something from not watching the Hawkeye show. Nonetheless, Vanessa as a character is reliant on Kingpin. I imagine had the original run of Daredevil continued, she would have developed into a character that can work on her own outside of Kingpin, as Kingpin would have been in jail after season 3, perhaps serving as a villain for Daredevil. But alas, we never got that 4th season, so she's still reliant on Kingpin as a character, and has just been floundering around, not really doing anything for these 2 seasons of Born Again. It's a wise decision to kill her off, and it will motivate Fisk to become even more unhinged, and bring back some of the desperately needed character traits from the original run, and it'll drive even more conflict with Daredevil. Hopefully with her out of the picture, more of the main cast can get more screen time.
I want to say 12 to 15.
I'm sorry, Mr. Murdoch. The answer's actually 10 to 12.
Oh, come on.
To the surprise of no one, the episode that has the flashback to the Netflix Daredevil time is the best episode of the series. This episode delivered on what I think the previous episodes were missing, with our character building conversations and close intimate moments between those characters. It's almost as if they heard what I was saying about the previous episodes and listened. It's fantastic seeing Eldon Nelson again as Foggy, and his dialogue is always great. In fact, the dialogue across the entire episode is its strength, and I'm glad to see a return to form. The consequence of shorter episode runs, going from 8 episodes from a 13 run in the Netflix era, causes things to be very fast-paced. We have to move from set piece to set piece, and we lose episodes like this. Having Matt and Bullseye speak to each other is as fantastic as ever. They do a lot of great mirroring with the position of the flashback scenes throughout this episode. Like positioning this scene in the past with Foggy and the inmate, and Bullseye and Daredevil in the present. Earlier in the episode, Foggy and Matt argue about whether they should let this person they're representing go to jail, even though they found a mistake in the warrant, which is literally a get-out-of-jail-free card. Foggy takes the side that they should let him out. He's had bad circumstances in life, and is capable of change and the ability to turn around his life. Later, Foggy gives him money and tells him to go away and try and build that new life. This is intercut with a scene of Matt and Bullseye, where Matt is thinking about abandoning Bullseye and escaping from the Punisher task force, which is hot in their trail. But Matt decides to go back and save him, which you can infer that even though Bullseye killed Foggy, that's not what Foggy would have wanted him to do. This also sidesteps the issue of Matt not having a clear internal conflict for the season. Near the end of the first episode, it was addressed that Matt was still affected by Foggy's death, but it hadn't really come up again since then, and I'm glad they've given proper focus to it. They're positioning an opposite character arc for our 2 lead characters, Matt overcoming his issues around Foggy's death, and Fisk absolutely crashing out because of Vanessa's. I actually thought I was going to have to eat my words from the last episode because they had Vanessa in surgery the entire time, and even had her wake up. Whenever this happens in a series, that usually means the character isn't dead, but they extended her death to make it even more tragic for Fisk and us the viewer. I wouldn't have been as connected to Fisk's reaction had they not had this extended hospital sequence. They also connect Buck to the flashbacks, having him as a hitman of sorts for Fisk's in the early season that we never saw. That's cool, but it doesn't majorly change anything, but it's nice that they're tying the material together as much as possible. They also mirror Buck's attempted assassination in the past, with him taking out Daniel to the woods in the present, which was a great way of increasing the tension of that scene. But it's probably time to talk more about the cinematography of the series and comparing it to the original run. And look, I hate to be a Netflix Daredevil purist, but I prefer the look in the earlier series. This episode put it into pretty clear contrast for me, because there were so many flashbacks that emulated the look of the Netflix series, and it just suits Daredevil so much more. I understand they don't have a choice anymore. They've been saddled with this look because of the first season, but the biggest difference between them is the aspect ratio or the black bars. Okay, look, I know there's plenty more differences. With the camera and the lenses they use, I mean, look at the halation and the fog bouncing on the top of the cop car in this scene. But I focus on this because it communicates the difference in vibe between the two series. The aspect ratio for Born Again is the same as a lot of films, and because of that, we as the viewer perceive it to be on a grander scale. It makes it feel more cinematic. I mean, hell, I literally did the same thing for my series, adding black bars purely to make it feel more cinematic. But in the Netflix series, we had a much wider view, and a look that was made for the television aspect ratio. And that made it feel more down to earth. Television aspect ratios have always been associated with a more human, day-to-day person events. When I see this, I think House, The Mentalist, Suits, etc. All shows with normal-ish people doing a day job. The original run having that ratio unconsciously connected you with the wider world. I mean, you literally see more in your screen, so you will be connected with the world around you more. And I think that's much more suited to a character like Daredevil. He's a street-level character, and being connected with the streets is core to him as a person. I appreciate all the cool new stuff they're doing with the visuals, and they can even be more stylized than the Netflix look. But the older style suited the character better. This episode is the return of Jessica Jones to our silver screens, and if the filmmakers meant to make this a surprise, then the marketing royally fucked that. Fair enough, I'm terminally online, so you probably didn't see the cast involvements on Twitter like I did, but every time I open TikTok, which is all the time because I'm on a dopamine leash from it, I get an ad for Daredevil Born Again, and literally the first frame is Jessica Jones. Which, if that's not enough for you, the frame of the episode on Disney Plus is her with Daredevil from the episode. The other two I get for marketing, but really? Maybe I'm the wrong person to talk to, because I'm gonna let you guys in on a little secret. I've never watched Jessica Jones. I only properly watched the Netflix Daredevil recently enough, and I've been playing around with the idea of going back and watching Jessica Jones, but I don't want to feel like I have to. Thankfully for this episode, she just helps Matt on an infiltration mission, and there's a little character moment about her, with her powers being on and off right now. Otherwise, she's not in any other scenes bar her introduction. She does reappear later in the series, and I didn't really feel lost short of her interaction with Luke Cage at the end. I don't know what their deal is, but they were probably together, I'm guessing, and the impact of them reuniting is lost to me. I'm really not a fan of crossover material like this, at least in the way that follows up previous storylines from other shows. As it turns out, I like Daredevil, and when I watch the Daredevil show, I come to watch Daredevil, not other characters' TV shows. I'd also assume fans of those shows would want a full series dedicated to their character if they're the inverse of me, where they want to watch Jessica Jones and not Daredevil. Aside from that one hiccup at the end, it's been handled well enough. I didn't feel like I needed to watch Hawkeye, at least in this season. It probably would have filled me in for whatever the hell was going on with Vanessa's other boyfriend. And I didn't feel like I needed to watch Jessica Jones for this episode. She, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist are all confirmed for season 3, and please God, crafted in a way where I don't feel like I'm missing out if I haven't watched those shows. At the end of the last episode, when they open the trunk to reveal someone is in the body bag, I thought that was supposed to be a reveal of a character. Like the girl from the mayor's office, maybe? But I guess it's just a random, because in the next episode, it's hand-waved off as crazy shit they did. But what did they do? Did they just bury a body? Did they chop up a body? Was it a complete random? Was it someone Buck killed from the previous episodes? That was a little weird. And you know what else was a little weird? Weird in a good way, though. The Doctor over-talking to Fisk, who Fisk promptly kills. What the fuck was that guy expecting? I must say his method of murder is a bit odd. He just bear hugs him so hard that he cracks his spine and dies. But at least Fisk is back to doing what we all love. That is crashing out all the time for the most minor inconveniences. A small cool detail they did is when the therapist is choking out Buck, we cut between Muse choking her and her doing the choking. Her tears in the present mirror Muse's mask, which is a really nice touch. I assume they're setting up for her to become the second Muse or some degree of villain in the third season. Because in this season, she doesn't get to do too much. Her character arc and storyline are all fine in isolation, I even like them, but I just find it hard to justify its inclusion with this small of an episode count. The time seems better served on our main cast, instead of a villain who won't even be a main player till season 3, I imagine. The absolute highlight of this episode, however, is Karen and her interpersonal conflict with Matt. There's a scene where she's debating on shooting Bullseye. What I thought was going to play out is she was going to get close, then stop herself, and blah 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 blah, this is what makes me better than you, that I won't kill you. But no, she actually tries to shoot him, and Daredevil stops her. She then supremely crashes out that Matt keeps saving people that cause more havoc, and it's great stuff. It feels like an evolution of the no-killing morality debate that happened in the earlier Netflix seasons. Which also leads into a great scene between Fisk and Daredevil, giving Fisk the choice for them to both leave New York and put it all behind them. Fisk obviously doesn't accept, and they scrap it out because Fisk knows Daredevil can't do anything. He won't kill him, and he can't get him arrested. So Matt leaves, developing a further conflict on if he will murder Fisk later in the season, along with it mirroring discussions of nearly killing Bullseye from the first episode of season 1. The episode ends with Karen getting caught by the task force, and the tension is really ramping up for 2 more banger episodes. I guess I spoke too soon, because I left episode 7 feeling underwhelmed. I was hoping this episode was designed to be more of a 2-parter, and the following episode, the season finale, would calm my issues with it. But it didn't really. As you're watching the show moment to moment, the energy is enthralling. But when I step back, I realize there's only 1 more episode left, and that's where things become a problem. Those problems being most apparent in this episode. Not to say things are explosively bad. It's just not hitting like it should be. 3 big elements feel very undercooked. The first being Matt's return to the public and the court case with Karen. This does get followed up on in the next episode, but I really think an entire episode should have been dedicated to the court case. Take the most famous court case in TV history, probably, from Better Call Saul's chicanery. Nearly the whole runtime of the episode is dedicated just to that court case, and the payoff is absolutely legendary. Matt's been missing from the public eye since the start of the season, and I've been sorely missing the lawyering side of this TV show. The core pitch of Daredevil as a character is lawyer by day and crime fighter by night, but we get 1 scene of him lawyering in this episode. Sure, there's a lot more in the following episode, but the building blocks are missing. It feels like if we had 13 episodes, an entire episode could be dedicated to just this court case, or have it spread across multiple episodes with all the intersecting plots. Like, imagine how great it would be to have a set of episodes with this case, and while the court is intermission, the AVTF are trying to kill Matt, like they briefly play with in this episode. It's kind of a cool plot thread that even though this case has no jury, they're essentially using the public as the jury to turn people against Fisk. But there's not enough of it, and in execution in the next episode, it also feels underbaked. We'll talk about that shortly, but tiniest of tiny nitpicks. Why are there 3 judges? Is this just an American thing I don't know about? It's not a big deal, but I'm just wondering. Anyway, the next part that feels underbaked is Heather, or Lady Muse, or the therapist woman, whatever you want to call her. Maybe I'm dumb, but I really didn't understand the significance of her scene with Kingpin. He confronts her about stealing Vanessa's earrings, and then nothing happens. Later, when she confronts Karen has a little speech about lying in bed with someone who isn't sure if she really loves him. They could turn on her, but that part is also hot. Is the implication that Heather perceives or wants to have that relationship with Kingpin? Or is it a reference to Heather being with Matt before? I'm really not sure. Then, once Heather and Karen have their confrontation, it just feels weak. I think we needed more setup for this, because it's played as if they have a history together, or they'd come into conflict in this season, and this was a big crescendo for their clash before Karen triumphs over her in the following episode. Instead, however, I'm left feeling like I missed something. Then there's our little Daniel. Poor little Michael Gandolfini dies in this episode, and I'm just kind of whatever about it. which is a strange reaction for me to have because he's probably been my favourite part of the season so far. Let me try to explain why I feel let down by his death here. I think the primary reason is it's rushed. He nearly goes through with bringing BB into the safe house to have Buck to kill her, but only after BB puts up some resistance, he decides to let her go. So far, we've only had Daniel do one thing that crossed his ethical boundary, and that's burying the body from the previous episode. Prior to that, he was on the up and up, going through with all the potentially shady requests purely as a way to improve his lifestyle, which is why I thought he'd go through with it and get BB killed. But he repents from all the bad decisions he's made and decides to go in and face Buck. That, as an emotional climax, doesn't feel earned to me. I never got the impression that they were going for a good person that lost his way through temptation, and in the final moments, he remembered his good nature. Mechanically as well, the loose ends aren't tied up. Why doesn't he just run off with BB? I suppose his mother is at risk, which he briefly mentions. But secondly, when he enters, he just lets Buck kill him. No plan, no standing up to Buck, no real execution of a character arc. Nothing. This could have been quite a powerful scene if there was more throughout the series of him backing down from being the bigger person. If it's presented as a more symbolic thing that he goes to face the mistakes he's created, even though he knows he's going to die, it could be cool. But I never got that that's what they were going for from this. They really have a lot to wrap up in this final episode, and not a lot of time to do it. And if there was ever any evidence that Daredevil needed a 13-episode run, then these last 2 episodes would be Exhibit A. I partially got what I wanted, since the first half of the episode is primarily focused on the court case, and while that's most certainly entertaining, it all hastily concludes, leaving me feeling empty. That's a shame, because I was enjoying the first half. The conclusion to the court case comes with the reveal that Matthew Murdock is in fact Daredevil, which is an interesting turn and a nice cliffhanger for Season 3. I enjoyed the continuation of the conflict between Fisk and Matt when they met in Episode 6, with Matt having to sacrifice his double life in order to take down Fisk. While I certainly enjoyed it in the moment, I've been reflecting on it, and I think there wasn't enough pressure to push us towards that reveal. The bulk of the screen time of this court case is the Fisk and Matt section, and is positioned as the Hail Mary final push to the court case to get it over the edge. But what we didn't have is much court case before that. What I'm saying is, the push towards Matt revealing that he's Daredevil didn't hit as hard as it could have, had they dedicated more time towards the court case. There's a little bit of the Fisk administration playing dirty tricks with Heather, giving a false psych evaluation to Karen, but even with that advantage, it's passed back and forth from who seems to be winning the case. I suppose you could also say there's been a smaller version of this with the swordsman case from episode 3, but that's separate from this court case feeling undercooked. Matt is then arrested at the end of the episode, being charged with a bunch of crimes as Daredevil, and that also didn't feel satisfying to me. I mean, yeah, obviously he committed a bunch of crimes as Daredevil, but I think it would have had far more weight if those consequences were made clear prior to the case. For example, a conversation between Karen and Matt, and them discussing that he's going to throw his life away if he does that, but it's the only way to set Karen free. Also, Matt's been in hiding this entire season, so it's hard to feel what he's lost since we don't see him in a normal life. The question you might have is, does it work better as a surprise reveal? Another thing I'm 50-50 on, and I could see it both ways. In the camp for a surprise reveal, it could have been a very strong ender to an episode, with the following episode covering the city riots, the assassination attempt, and wrapping up this season's plotline. While doing something like this, you can fit in the consequences from Matt's decision and how it's going to climax with his arrest. Either way I see it, this needed more juice, which goes doubly so for the part of the episode following the court case. Fisk holding up the courthouse could have been its own whole episode, with the public increasingly siding against him, leading to the uprising that happens later. That part felt very weak, as there wasn't enough given to the public and their shifting opinion. That was the plan of Matt and Kirsten to play to the public as a form of jury, but I was never clear on how the public thought of the court case. Something like this could be shored up with more time and attention given to it, like for example checking between the court days on the public's reaction to them as Fisk as he crumbles under a mountain of lies. Also, am I the only one who found it super funny when Fisk just kicks the shit out of a bunch of random civilians while leaving the courtroom? This isn't a complaint, I absolutely love it. So just before that happens, the public are about to storm the mayor's office. The anti-vigilante task force guys are blocking them, but then a bit of conflict happens between Officer Powell and the other guy, as the other guy has conflicting morals about what's going on. This is another section that felt underwhelming to me. As a whole, the AVTF was underutilized. It felt in a way that we could have had more dedicated to them. As they are in their current form throughout the season, they feel more like bodies that Daredevil can fight with when they need an action scene. I would have been for Powell being in more direct conflict with Daredevil or specific vigilantes. I know this goes without saying as well, but the task force wearing the Punisher logo is really underutilized. It seems like there was supposed to be a commentary on police taking things into their own hands like the Punisher, but that was never really explored. Of course, that would just be used as a mock symbol to hide the corruption and used as a tool of recruitment to budding new officers until they're already in too deep, forcing them to ride along with the corruption, but it just doesn't get explored. Kingpin is shipped off to an idyllic beach and Matt is in jail. They're both in their own form of prison, with Officer Powell being in the same prison as Matt. Luke Cage is teased to return in Season 3, Lady Muse looks like she'll be in full swing, and Bullseye is going to be working for Mr. Charles in the upcoming season. We have a lot of plotline set up for Season 3, and despite my issues, I'm still looking forward to that next season. Putting the entire run into context, my enjoyment of Daredevil really fell off. And I hate to say that, because it had so many great elements, and the run from episode 2 to 6 was really enjoyable. Even though I prefer the style of the original Netflix run, I enjoyed the bold cinematography choices they took throughout the show. But as we came to those last 2 episodes, reality had caught up with me, and the show felt like they had too many plates spinning. They had an extreme breakneck pace to get through all the material they had to get through, and in the end, it fell a little flat. By no means was it a complete disaster or a train wreck. It just never had enough room to breathe. One of my absolute favourite sequences from the original Daredevil run is Kingpin flicking through Bullseye's backstory in the 5th episode of the 3rd season. We got to live through his backstory, and really took our time developing his motivations and his deepest struggles. They dedicated 15 minutes of screen time just to that sequence. And that's something we're sorely missing from the Born Again run. My favourite episode from this season is episode 5, where it feels like they have that time to breathe. In the flashback, Matt and Foggy are just shooting the shit and having fun with each other, as the plot builds in the background. Born Again seems to have the opposite problem of The Boys, where a lot of The Boys was dedicated to those smaller character moments, but not delivering on the massive stakes they've been building up to. Born Again had to rush from scene to scene to fit in every piece of a storyline as efficiently as possible, while balancing multiple character arcs and story threads, where by the time it reaches the end, I just feel underwhelmed. While the Netflix series could have some weird pacing issues, there was always enough to lead us up to a satisfying conclusion. But it's not completely fair. While they still had full creative control of this season, and wasn't a patchwork like the first season was, going into Season 3, they won't be forced into wrapping up any established storylines from Season 1. Let's hope that they use their time effectively going into that 3rd season, because there is a genuine greatness in this season of Daredevil, and you can tell there's so much talent involved. They really just need to give Daredevil some more episodes.